Hello, this is my second video on chapter 4 of Berger's book, The Heretical Imperative, which came out in 1979. So last week I introduced Berger's concept of the reductive possibility, that is modernizing tradition through bargaining with modernity and bargaining away mythology with particular reference to the work of Rudolf Bultmann. And so today I'm going to talk about that in more detail. So the translation model. Bultmann's proposal to demythologize Christianity is a work of great intellectual force and a tribute to the author's personal integrity. He's not the only one to use this cognitive strategy, however. It's an attempt to deal with the cognitive discontents of modernity, and as such is one of a genre. Bultmann's procedure can be seen as a model for a specific type of cognitive strategy. As such, this model is relevant to any religious tradition. The model always starts with an analysis of the modern consciousness, supposedly secularized and ipso facto incapable of assenting to traditional definitions of reality. Orthodox and neo-orthodox thinkers would agree, but whilst they would deplore this consequence of the modern situation, those who support the reductive model jump from diagnosis to the epistemological assumption that the modern worldview is superior to the traditional one. Centrally, that modern humans have discovered superior ways of knowing the truth that were unavailable to their forebears. This is often stated as a self-evident fact and without proof. Other aspects of modern consciousness may be added, but these vary from one author to another. This model also states that the mythological, supernaturalistic, otherworldly aspects of the religious tradition must be jettisoned. The empirical universe is declared to be secular and not subject to supernatural interventions in terms of miracles, demons, and the rest. It is no longer possible to believe such things. The tradition becomes cognitively secularized. At the heart of this model is a translation procedure. That's the term Berger's using. Terms of transcendent reference in the tradition must be either eliminated if they're marginal or translated into terms of immanent reference if they're part of the core belief. Otherworldly references are translated into this worldly ones, the super-empirical into the empirical, the superhuman into the human. This, it's believed, will make the tradition acceptable to modern man, as he will no longer be required to give up his modern worldview. This is not a tactical move to keep people in the churches, according to Berger. Rather, it is the cognitive force of modern secularity on the thinkers themselves. That is, how can I stay in the church and continue to think honestly? In theory, any translation language will do if it accomplishes this purpose. That is, it's secular in content and secularizing in effect. Bultmann used the language of existential philosophy, but other languages can also be used. A comparative grammar of such languages could be prepared, but major possibilities are translating the tradition into a system of ethics, translating the tradition into a system of psychology, or translating the tradition into a system of politics. Translating the tradition into a system of ethics. Jesus, or any other religious leader, can be seen, from this standpoint, as a great ethical teacher or moral exemplar. This is possible even if Jesus or any other religious leader didn't actually emphasize ethics. It's how believers understand his message today that is important. Note, this is actually a very common lay response on the part of many contemporary American Christians and Jews, saying that they're not much interested in the theological content of their tradition, but greatly value its ethical teachings, sending their children along for religious instruction to the church or synagogue. Ethics can easily be stated in secular terms, so this is a popular option. Striving for justice, compassion, concern for the poor and depressed, care for the family, abolition of violence, and so on, do not have to have the supernatural definition of reality. The religion is about a certain moral attitude. But note that the alleged moral teachings of the tradition can be used to support many different social positions, and historically have been. Sexual abstinence or tolerance, total pacifism or self-sacrifice in just wars, racial tolerance to belief in the white man's burden, so-called. Then we have translating the tradition into a system of psychology. The religious tradition is said to be about mental health or the wholeness of the individual. These are similar to the use of the language of modern philosophy for the same purpose. There are many variants of varying degrees of sophistication. Psychologizing religion has been very popular in the United States since its heyday in the 1950s, with Norman Vincent Peale and others acting as prophets of psycho-religious salvation. Today we have movements centering on the ideas of Jung or Abraham Maslow in the pop therapy industry. Thirdly, we have translation of the tradition into a system of secular politics. This is an active response to social problems, akin to the translation into a system of ethics. Thus, at present, we have a version of Christianity presented as ideologically leftist and theoretically Marxist, anti-capitalist, anti-bourgeois, and promoting some version of socialism. Remember, Berger's book came out in 1979, so the situation in America is quite different now. This is not a necessary link. Rightist translations are also possible, as Berger notes, thus identifying Christianity with the American way of life, liberal democracy and capitalism. Jesus Christ as a successful salesman, as with the 1920s bestseller The Man Nobody Knows, is just as plausible as seeing him as a putative Che Guevara. Alongside Latin American socialist Christians are army officers who see Christianity as a fight against communism and miniskirts. A major problem with this option is that it has a built-in tendency towards further secularization, and so at some point becomes self-liquidating. Even in the case of Bultmann's work, why should the action of God in Christ, or the very notion of God acting, be excluded from demythologization? What then would be left to be salvaged? If all the secular benefits of what the religious tradition is supposed to be really all about can be had without the tradition, then why should anyone continue to identify with it, whether it be the Christian tradition, the Jewish tradition, or whatever? Their lingering attachment to the tradition, at least in the United States, appears to be transitory. So many thanks for listening, and particular thanks to my patrons, Sina Fazel, David Langness, Anthony Lee, Ian Palin, Johannes Rosenbaum, Steve Scholl, Ismail Valesco, Tobias Vetter, Tricia Williams, Jonah Winters, and Gloria Yazdani. You're very welcome to support my channel. Like, comment, and share on the videos if you will. Subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos, and I'll give the Patreon and PayPal links below if you want to provide practical support. Next week we'll finish off this chapter with a section I'm calling Myth and Symbol. Have a good day.